In this lesson, we'll be using ActionScript to create a two-question quiz with a score page at the end of it all to show the results of your quiz. I've got a final file completed here, so I'm going to show it to you running, and then I'll explain the makeup. I'll go to Control Test Movie to run this movie. And you can see here we've got a very simple layout, but I've got a quiz with 3 questions with 3 buttons, and I choose one of the buttons for my answer. When I choose the answer, it forwards me automatically to the next question, and I continue like that until I get to the end page, which shows me the result of my score. Now I'll tell you right now, the first question, the correct answer is the third box down. The second question is the second box. So if I click the first box, which is the wrong answer, and I also click the first box in this question, which is the wrong answer, I get a result of 0 out of 2. I hit my reset button, which brings me back to the first questions again. If I hit the third box, which is the right answer, I click that. The second box, which is the wrong answer, I should get 1 out of 2, which I do. And let me go back here. And again, the correct answer, when were movie clips introduced into Flash? They were introduced in version 3. And the second question, when was MP3 audio support added to Flash? It came in version 4. So I'll click that, and 2 out of 2 correct answers. So basically what we've got here is a device to record which button we've clicked on each question. And then at the end, we've got a calculator which adds the results of all of those questions and then displays them on screen in a dynamic text box. And I've also got a reset button which brings us back to 0 and brings us back to the first question. Now the way this was built, you can see here on my main timeline, I have one layer just for background graphics, which happens to be the title in this case. I have another layer for my buttons, and you'll notice in the timeline I've got each question separated by a keyframe, and I've also got each question labeled on my labels layer. So question 1 is Q1, question 2 is Q2, and the score page is called score. Now I could have had 20 questions in here, but I just kept it down to 2. And again, you'll notice the buttons are keyframed as well as the questions. My questions layer is simply the text boxes, and I've got a text box in here that is blank, where on my score page I will be feeding that text box with the result using ActionScript. Okay, so just again, I've got labels layer and my ActionScript layer. So let's go to frame 1. And we'll look at that. And again, I've got 3 generic buttons. It's simply a square which changes color on roll over and click. And if I go to my library, you'll see I've got the one generic button. And I'm repurposing it because I'm not attaching text to the buttons. The text is just static. However, I am giving each button a unique instance name. So the first button on question 1 is called choice1 underscore BTN. The second button is called choice2 underscore BTN, and the third, of course, is called choice3 underscore BTN. Now if I move over to the second set of questions at frame 10, they again have unique instance numbers, instance names rather. And I've got it choice1 underscore 2, signifying the second question, underscore BTN. And again, the second button is choice2 underscore 2 underscore BTN. And of course, the third box is choice3 underscore 2 underscore BTN. Now when I go to the last box, I'll explain that when we get to it. So let's go back to frame 1 and look at our ActionScript. So I've got 3 buttons on the screen. Basically the concept is I need to create a device that will record which button got clicked. In coding, and in particular ActionScript, we will use what is known as a variable. A variable is a programming container which holds data. So let's go in here to the action script and I'll show you how we establish that. So I'll highlight the frame with the action script. I'll call up my actions panel and I'll explain all the code here. To start with, we've got a stop command. That's so that our playhead remains on that frame when the movie starts. And then I've got these 4 commands starting with VAR. Well, VAR is how we declare or initialize a variable. And again, the variable is the container. So really there's 2 parts to a variable. There's the container and then there's the data or the value. So the container name that I'm establishing here for the first question is called Q1 answer. So VAR, then establish the name Q1 answer, and then the command line with a semicolon. So I also made a container to record which button got clicked in the second set of questions, which I've named VAR space and the name Q2 answer. Now I also need to have a container which is basically my calculator, which holds the number of correct answers. And I do start it off by creating it with a value of 0. So I've declared it a variable, VAR, and the name of my score collector, if you will, is called total correct equals 0. So equals assigns 0 as the value of the variable called total correct. And then this last one is a little bit different, but I still declare it as a variable. It is the name of the text box on the screen that I'm going to put the result of total correct into, so that it's not only contained in the memory, but we actually will display it to the user. So I'll take whatever is in total correct and display it on the screen in a text box called total display. And then of course we have our buttons, which I created by highlighting them, going to my code snippets, and just using the mouse click event. Now I'm not going to do it here because it's already been done, but I went to each button, highlighted them, double clicked mouse click event, and again I'll go back to my code. And I'd already established an instance name, so choice1 underscore btn. When I highlighted it and double clicked the mouse event for mouse click, it generated this code, and I just replaced the content of the function with 2 lines of code. The first line is establishing which button got clicked. So for each button I assigned a number. So Q1 answer equals 1, which means that button number 1 got clicked. And then after that I have an automatic forwarding in my navigation to the next question. So go to and stop, label Q2. So each button gets a number associated with it. So Q1 answer equals 2 if I clicked on button number 2. And I've just commented that the third button is the correct answer, and it will assign a 3 to Q1 answer. So whatever button gets clicked, Q1 answer gets assigned the value that's associated with that button. And then I automatically send the playhead to the next question. So let's go to frame 10 and look at that code, which is very similar in fact. The only difference though is that you only need to declare your variables once in a movie. So they're all declared in frame 1. So in frame 10 I don't need to redeclare those variables. They're alive and they're in the memory. So let me call up the action script for frame 10. And we'll scroll to the top here. And it's simply the buttons. Now I've given these buttons again unique instance names, and they've been keyframed in. So choice1 underscore 2 underscore btn. Very similarly, has a mouse click event handler with the add event listener. And again, this time I'm assigning a value of 1 to the variable Q2 answer, not Q1 but Q2 answer. So we're registering which button gets clicked on the second question. And again, I advance the playhead to the label called score. So each button gets a unique number assigned to Q2 answer, and that's how we register which button gets clicked. And again, I can see here with my commenting that the second button on the second question is the correct answer. So again, third button, same idea. We establish a value that goes into the variable Q2 answer, and then we move the playhead to the label called score. So let's go to that label now under frame 20. And let me show you what's required on the page to display the result of our answer. Then I'll go to the action script. Now you can see here I've got a text box. And if I go to my properties, it's a TLF text box, read only, but I assigned an instance name to it called display total, capital T. Because if we want to talk to this text box, it does need an instance name. So it's TLF text box. And now let me highlight the frame with the action script. We'll call that up. And let me explain what happens here. I've got a conditional statement, which is an if statement, which checks a condition, and based on whether that condition is true, it will execute the following commands. So I've commented it here, check answer 1, and the conditional is if, then space, then bracket, if Q1 answer, which is the variable, equals, which is 2 equal signs, which is checking the value of that variable Q1 answer. If Q1 answer equals 3, which is the right answer by the way, button 3, total correct, which is what I registered the score in, equals total correct plus 1. And what that does is it takes everything on the right hand side of the equal sign, which is an assign command, and assigns that to the variable on the left. So it takes whatever this is and adds 1 more to it. Now I'm going to check answer number 2. If Q2 answer equals 2, meaning the second button was the correct answer, and we're checking against that. If Q2 answer equals 2, total correct, again, equals total correct plus 1. So it takes whatever total correct is and it adds 1 more to that. So if I had clicked 3 and 2, total correct would equal 2. Now my display box to share this information with the user is called display total, and we address the text box with a .text. So the text of my text box called display total will be assigned the value of the variable called total correct. So if I'd gotten both answers correct, this value would equal 2, and it would assign 2 to the text box called display total. And then just one thing to wrap up the whole concept is I have a reset button with the functionality of going to and playing Q1. Now I think I'll actually change that. I know I have a stop command in the first frame, but I'm going to actually change that to go to and stop. In this case it doesn't matter so much because I do have a stop command on the first frame, but I think it would be actually a little more formal to say go to and stop Q1. So I'm just going to change that. And that is how we built this quiz. Once again, 3 buttons on the first page, 3 buttons on the second page, and then a text box with an instance name that gets dynamically filled up with the result of the variable called total correct. And again, I do also have a reset button. So I'll just run this quickly again. Test movie. And we know that question 3 is the correct answer. When were movie clips introduced into Flash? Version 3. And the second box is correct. When was MP3 audio support added to Flash? Version 4. And there's our result. And just to prove that this does work, I'll choose 2 wrong answers. Version 1 and then version 3. And there's our 0 out of 2. Now one more thing I'm noticing is that 0 is the wrong font. So let's go and address that as well. Just getting very, fussy at this point. I can actually go into this text box, double click it, type in a 0, and save that. Because for some reason, and I'm not sure why, but that 0 didn't come out with the font where anything 1 and above did. So I can actually physically type in a 0 because that's going to get substituted if it's anything other than 0. So let's give that another test movie. Control, test movie, test. And I'll go for the 0, so version 1 is the wrong answer, version 3 is the wrong answer. And there we go, we've got the font, which is actually impact in this case, showing even with the 0. We'll go with a right answer and a wrong answer, 1 out of 2. And then a right answer and a right answer, 2 out of 2. And that's a very simple way on how to build a quiz using Flash and ActionScript 3.